The heavy oak door clicked shut, sealing the quiet house with a sudden, suffocating permanence. Arthur stood perfectly still in the fading afternoon light, the echo of his son's retreating footsteps fading into the driveway. They had not looked back. He was 78, his hands weathered from decades of providing, yet in a single conversation, his life's work had been reduced to a simple, devastating ledger of burdens and liabilities. Their words still hung in the stagnant air, sharp and calculating. They spoke of nursing homes and liquidated assets as if he were already gone, sitting merely feet away. Arthur did not argue or beg. He gathered his coat and stepped out onto the porch, choosing the dignity of silence over the humiliation of pleading. The autumn wind bit through his thin sweater, carrying the chill of sudden, absolute solitude. He walked down the street he had helped pave 40 years ago, carrying nothing but a small leather satchel. The neighborhood felt like a foreign country now. Every familiar mailbox and manicured lawn a reminder of the life that had abruptly expelled him. Arthur found a wooden bench at the edge of the municipal park. He watched the leaves fall, realizing his wealth was gone, and apparently his family too. A few yards away, Julian sat sipping cold coffee, his eyes fixed on the empty space beside him. It had been exactly 6 months since his own father had passed away, leaving a hollow ache in his chest that refused to heal. Julian missed the quiet wisdom, the steady presence, and the comforting weight of a shared silence. He noticed the elderly man shivering on the bench, looking completely untethered. Driven by an instinct he could not entirely explain, Julian stood up and walked over. He did not offer pity, sensing the fragile pride that held the older man upright. Instead, he simply offered a spare travel blanket from his backpack and a warm cup of coffee. Arthur looked up, his eyes defensive at first, but the genuine, unpretentious warmth in Julian's gaze made him accept the small, quiet gesture. They sat together as the sun dipped below the horizon, trading fragmented sentences about the changing weather and the quiet park. Julian learned Arthur had nowhere to go, a truth the older man admitted with a heavy, defeated sigh. Without overthinking the logistics or the burden, Julian offered his small guest room. It was not a grand gesture, just a simple refusal to let another father figure freeze in isolation. The first few weeks were a delicate dance of boundaries and quiet observation. Arthur insisted on doing small chores, washing the dishes with meticulous care to earn his keep. Julian, meanwhile, found an unexpected comfort in hearing footsteps around the house again. The agonizing silence that had plagued his apartment was replaced by the soothing rhythm of a shared routine, slowly mending the unseen fractures in both of their hearts. Evenings became their sanctuary, filled with conversations that spanned decades of regrets, triumphs, and quiet observations about human nature. Arthur never spoke poorly of his sons, though the profound pain of their betrayal lingered in his eyes. Julian listened patiently, offering the kind of steady respect Arthur had been starved of. In return, Arthur provided the grounded, gentle guidance Julian had desperately craved since lowering his own father into the earth. Winter arrived, bringing a harsh chill that worsened Arthur's arthritis. Julian adjusted his work schedule, making sure the apartment was warm and that Arthur's medication was always refilled. He never kept score. For Julian, caring for Arthur was not a chore. It was a deeply personal privilege. It was a way to honor the memory of the man he had lost, channeling his lingering grief into an act of profound love. Unbeknownst to Julian, Arthur spent his afternoons making quiet phone calls to an old friend who worked in estate law. When his sons had discarded him, they assumed he was entirely bankrupt, having seen only the drained checking accounts he used for daily expenses. They had never known about the quiet investments he made decades prior, hidden away under a separate trust that he had never touched or publicly claimed. Arthur had initially planned to reveal these assets to his sons during that fateful conversation, hoping to secure his care. But their immediate cruelty had silenced him. He realized then that their love was conditional, tied entirely to what they believed they could extract from him. Now, watching Julian meticulously prepare a modest dinner after a long shift, Arthur understood the rare, invaluable nature of a truly selfless human heart. 2 years drifted by, marking a period of quiet joy and mutual healing. Arthur grew frailer, his steps slowing down as time demanded its inevitable toll. Yet, his spirit had never been lighter. He was surrounded by a profound sense of safety and dignity. Julian bathed him, fed him, and read to him when his eyesight failed, performing every exhausting task with an unwavering gentleness that brought tears to Arthur's eyes. As the third spring approached, Arthur's health took a sudden, irreversible turn. He was confined to his bed, his breathing shallow and labored. Julian stayed by his side around the clock, holding his weathered hand and whispering stories of the memories they had built together. The air in the room was heavy, not with fear, but with a profound, peaceful acceptance. Arthur looked at Julian, his eyes brimming with immense gratitude. In the quiet hours of an early Sunday morning, Arthur slipped away peacefully. There was no pain, only the gentle release of a long, fully lived life. Julian sat in the stillness, tears tracking down his face, mourning the loss of a second father. He handled the modest funeral arrangements himself, standing alone by the grave, deeply thankful for the unexpected years of warmth and wisdom the universe had granted him. A week later, a formal letter arrived at Julian's door, summoning him to a law office downtown. Coincidentally, Arthur's 2 sons were also there, having received a similar notice. They looked at Julian with visible disdain, assuming he was merely a hired caretaker trying to squeeze a final paycheck from their father's meager belongings. The attorney motioned for them to sit, opening a thick leather folder with a grave, deliberate expression. The lawyer explained that Arthur had possessed a hidden portfolio, investments that had quietly compounded into a staggering fortune over 40 years. The sons leaned forward, their eyes suddenly wide with eager anticipation and poorly disguised greed. They began whispering about real estate and vacations, completely ignoring Julian, who sat quietly, still processing the shock of Arthur's hidden life. The lawyer cleared his throat, demanding absolute silence in the small room. Reading from Arthur's final testament, the lawyer delivered the reality of the situation. The sons were left exactly what they had valued their father at during his final days: nothing. The document stated clearly that they had voluntarily relinquished their inheritance the moment they stripped an old man of his dignity. Their outrage was immediate and loud, but the legal framework was ironclad, leaving them absolutely powerless against their own past choices. The entirety of the estate, including a vast sum of money and a beautiful countryside property, was bequeathed to Julian. The letter attached to the will simply read, "To the boy who gave a discarded man a home, you showed me that family is forged through sacrifice, not blood. Use this to build a life as beautiful as the kindness you freely gave." Julian held the paper, weeping in stunned silence. The sons stormed out, trapped in a bitter prison of their own making, realizing that their selfish calculations had cost them everything. Julian walked out into the bright afternoon sun, his life completely transformed. He had not sought a reward. He had simply offered his heart to a stranger in need. He looked up at the sky, feeling the comforting, protective presence of 2 fathers watching over him from above. Julian used the funds to open a community center for abandoned elders, ensuring that no one else would ever have to face the cold wind of rejection alone. The facility buzzed with life, laughter, and the gentle clatter of shared meals. Arthur's legacy lived on, not through cold currency, but through the enduring warmth of human connection. The world had broken them both, but together, they had built something truly unbreakable.